You are listening to HOA Checkmate. I wish this was exaggerated. You missed the deadline, and now you get the vendor fee. That was Christine Parker, standing at the end of my driveway at 7 in the morning, pointing at the snow pile I had just finished moving. Her face was red, her breath came out in sharp white bursts, and she held a clipboard like it was a warrant. I had been awake since 5, shoveling in the dark because the plow had dumped a ridge across my driveway entrance during the night. Now she was telling me I owed money for something I did not even know was a rule. I live in Reno, Nevada, in a neighborhood called Juniper Iceway Commons Association, where the HOA treats winter like a military operation and neighbors like suspects. I am a municipal code researcher. I read ordinances for fun. I know what is enforceable and what is theater. Christine was pure theater. She stepped closer, her black knit beanie pulled low, her blue parka zipped to her chin. I do not need your explanation. I need your payment, she said. The pile is encroaching on the right-of-way. That is a violation under our winter compliance protocol. You were notified last week. I had not been notified. I checked my mailbox every day. I asked her what notice she was talking about. She tapped the clipboard. We sent an email to all residents on the 15th. You are required to check the portal daily during snow season. The 15th was a Monday. Today was Thursday. That gave me less than a week to learn about a rule I had never heard of and comply with standards nobody had explained. I told her I wanted to see the policy in writing. She held up the laminated sheet in her hand but angled it away from me so I could not read it. This is the official guidance, she said. You can request a copy through the management office, but that takes 5 business days. The fine is effective immediately. I asked how much. She smiled. $200 for the initial violation. Another $100 per day if you do not move the pile by noon. I had moved the pile away from my car and off the sidewalk. It sat maybe 18 inches from the curb. The city right-of-way in Reno extends about 10 feet from the center line of the street, which meant my pile was nowhere near the actual boundary. I told Christine that. She shook her head. Our covenant grants the HOA authority to enforce stricter standards than the city. You agreed to that when you bought here. I had bought the house 6 months ago. The seller had mentioned the HOA was active, but did not say it ran like a surveillance state. Christine was the architectural committee chair, which apparently gave her authority to patrol driveways at dawn and issue fines on the spot. She turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. If the plow damages our curbing because your pile is too close, we will bill you for repairs. That can run into the thousands. I watched her walk back to her car, a white sedan with an HOA parking placard on the dash. My hands were numb. My back hurt. I had been trying to keep peace with neighbors, and the HOA was turning everyone against me. That was the stakes. I had moved here for quiet. Now I was living in a place where someone could find me before breakfast. I went inside and made coffee. My phone buzzed. An email from the Juniper Iceway Commons Association management portal. Subject line: Final notice. Winter compliance violation. I opened it. The body of the email referenced a policy document attached as a PDF. I downloaded it. The file would not open. Corrupted. I called the management office. A recorded message said they were closed until 9. I left a voicemail asking for a working copy of the winter policy and a breakdown of the fine Christina just threatened me with. Then I grabbed my tabbed binder, the one I keep for property documents and code references, and started searching the county and city websites. Reno Municipal Code has clear rules about snow removal from sidewalks. Homeowners have 24 hours after a storm to clear pedestrian paths. There is no mention of snow pile placement except in commercial zones. The HOA covenant, which I pulled up on my laptop, did grant the association some authority to create rules, but those rules had to be recorded in meeting minutes and posted to residents at least 30 days before enforcement. I checked the portal. The meeting minutes section had 3 entries from the past year. None of them mentioned winter compliance. None of them mentioned snow piles. I downloaded every document I could find and saved them to a folder. If Christine wanted to play enforcement games, I was going to make her show her work. At 8:30, I heard an engine outside. I looked out the front window. A white pickup truck with an HOA vendor logo on the door was idling in front of my house. A man in an orange vest got out holding a clipboard. He walked up my driveway and knocked. I opened the door. He introduced himself as a contracted compliance inspector. He said Christine had filed a report, and he was here to document the violation and photograph the site. I asked if he had a warrant or any legal authority to step onto my property. He said the HOA covenant granted access for inspections. I told him I did not consent and he could photograph from the street if he wanted, but he was not coming into my yard. He stared at me. Then he stepped back, took 3 photos from the sidewalk, and left. I watched him drive away. My chest was tight. This was not normal. This was harassment. I called my contractor, the guy who had done my roof work in the fall. I asked if he knew anyone who handled snow and ice issues. He said he did some winter gutter and ice dam work, but warned me it had to happen before the next freeze cycle. We had a warm spell coming this weekend, then another storm Monday. If I had ice problems, we needed to move fast. I did not have ice problems yet, but I made a note. The time pressure was real. At 9, I called the management office again. A woman answered. I explained the situation. She put me on hold, then came back and said Christine had filed the violation under an emergency winter protocol that allowed immediate enforcement. I asked when that protocol had been approved. She said she would check and call me back. She did not call back. By noon, I had not moved the snow pile. It was still sitting 18 inches from the curb, exactly where it had been that morning. I went outside to check the mail. Christine was parked across the street, sitting in her car, watching. When I looked at her, she got out. I see you ignored the deadline, she said. That means the daily penalty starts now. You are at $300 total. Tomorrow it will be $400. I asked her to show me the written policy. She held up the laminated sheet again, same as before, angled away. I told her that was not good enough. If she wanted me to comply, she needed to provide a clear standard with measurements, a reference to the meeting where it was approved, and a breakdown of how the fine was calculated. She laughed. We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. That line stuck with me. It was so casual, so confident. She actually believed she could tow my car off my own driveway because of a snow pile. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Christine's face changed. She stepped back. You cannot record me without permission, she said. Nevada is a one-party consent state. I told her that. She turned and walked back to her car. Before she got in, she called over her shoulder. You will regret this. That night, I got another email. Subject line. Leon Notice, Juniper Iceway Commons Association. The body of the email said I owed $500 in winter enforcement fees, plus a $200 administrative surcharge for non-compliance, plus a $100 legal processing fee. If I did not pay within 10 days, the HOA would file a lien against my property. I read it twice. The math did not add up. Christine had said $300 that morning. Now it was $800. The email was signed by the management company, not Christine, but I knew she had written it. I forwarded the email to a real estate attorney I had worked with during the home purchase. I asked if an HOA could levy fines without a hearing, and if they could add fees retroactively. He replied the next morning. He said the covenant allowed fines for violations, but the process had to follow Nevada HOA law, which required notice, an opportunity to be heard, and a written finding. He said the lien threat was premature and probably unenforceable, but if they filed it anyway, I would have to fight it in court, which would cost more than the fine. He suggested I pay under protest and then dispute it later. I told him I was not paying anything until I saw the policy and the meeting minutes that authorized it. Saturday morning, I went outside to salt my driveway. The temperature had climbed into the 40s overnight, and everything was turning to slush. I put down a reflective triangle marker near my front wheel, the kind you use for roadside emergencies, just to mark where my car was parked, in case the snowmelt made the edges hard to see. Christine showed up 10 minutes later. She saw the triangle and lost it. "What is that?" she said, pointing. "A safety marker." I said, "You cannot put unauthorized equipment in the common area." "It is on my driveway." "Your driveway connects to the street, which is HOA maintained. That makes it subject to our visual standards." She kicked the triangle. It skidded across the driveway and landed in a puddle. I picked it up, rinsed it off, and put it back. She took a photo with her phone. "You just added another violation," she said. I asked what the violation was. She said unapproved exterior modifications. I told her a triangle was not a modification. She said it did not matter. The architectural committee had final say on anything visible from the street. I was done talking. I went inside and called the management office again. This time I got a different person, a man who introduced himself as the property manager. I explained everything: the snow pile, the fines, the lien threat, the triangle. He listened, then said Christine had been running a winter safety committee for the past 2 years and had broad discretion to enforce seasonal rules. I asked if the winter safety committee was an official HOA committee. He paused. He said it was a volunteer task force authorized by the board. I asked if the board had voted on it. He said he would have to check the minutes. I told him I had already checked the minutes and found nothing. He said he would get back to me. He did not get back to me. Sunday, I spent 4 hours going through every document I could find. I pulled the original covenant from the county recorder, the bylaws, the board election results, and every meeting minute posted to the portal. I made a spreadsheet. I highlighted every mention of committees, enforcement, and fines. There was no winter safety committee. There was no mention of snow pile placement. There was no emergency protocol. What I did find was interesting. The architectural committee, which Christine chaired, had authority to approve or deny exterior changes, but only for permanent structures. Temporary items like holiday decorations, yard signs, and seasonal equipment were explicitly excluded. A snow pile was temporary. So was a triangle marker. I also found something else. The November meeting minutes, which had been posted in December, included a line about the board discussing winter protocols. But when I compared that version to an earlier draft I had downloaded in October as part of my due diligence, the line was missing. Someone had edited the minutes after the meeting. That was my trump card. I did not raise my voice, because my proof was louder than any argument. I did not tell Christine. I did not tell the management company. I saved the two versions side by side and waited. Monday morning, the next storm hit. 6 inches of fresh snow. I shoveled my driveway and sidewalk by 8. I moved the pile to the same spot as before, 18 inches from the curb. I put the reflective triangle back. Then I went inside and waited. Christine showed up at 9 with a tow truck. I ran outside. The tow truck driver was standing next to Christine, holding a clipboard. She pointed at my car. "That vehicle is parked in violation of winter safety standards," she said to him. "I need it removed." I asked the driver if he had a signed authorization from me or a court order. He looked at Christine. She handed him a paper. He read it. Then looked at me. "This says the HOA has authority to remove vehicles blocking snow removal operations." My car was not blocking anything. It was parked in my own driveway. I told him that. He looked at Christine again. She said the driveway was considered part of the snow management zone, and my car was interfering with drainage. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I asked Christine to show me the section of the covenant that allowed the HOA to tow a car from a private driveway without owner consent. She refused. The driver looked uncomfortable. He told Christine he was not going to tow the car without a clearer authorization. She argued. He walked back to his truck and left. Christine turned to me. Her face was white. "You think you are smart," she said. "You think you can just ignore the rules because you know some codes. This is not about codes. This is about keeping this neighborhood safe and functional. People like you make it harder for everyone." I asked her what people like me meant. She did not answer. She got in her car and drove away. That afternoon, I got a call from my neighbor, an older man named Paul, who lived 3 houses down. He said he had been shoveling that morning and saw the whole thing with a tow truck. He asked if I needed a witness. I said I might. He said Christine had been doing this to people for 2 years, targeting anyone who pushed back on her rules, and nobody had fought it, because the fines were easier to pay than the hassle of fighting. Paul became my ally. He had kept copies of the original HOA covenants from when he bought his house in 2003. He brought them over that night. We compared them to the current version on the portal. Several sections had been rewritten. None of the changes had been voted on by the membership. Paul said Christine had taken over the architectural committee 3 years ago, after the previous chair retired. Since then, she had added dozens of rules that were not in the covenant. Most of them were small enough that people just complied. But the winter enforcement was new this year, and it was aggressive. I asked Paul if he would be willing to testify at a hearing if it came to that. He said yes. If you are enjoying this, hit the like button and subscribe for more wild HOA stories. The next day, I filed a formal records request with the management company. I asked for all meeting minutes, all committee authorizations, all enforcement actions taken in the past 2 years, and all documentation related to the Winter Safety Committee. Nevada law requires HOAs to provide records within 10 business days. Wednesday, I got a response. The management company said the records were available for inspection at their office, but I could not make copies without board approval. That was a stall tactic. Nevada law says owners have the right to copy records at their own expense. I replied with a citation to the statute and said I would be at their office Friday at 2 to inspect and copy the records. If they refused, I would file a complaint with the state ombudsman. Thursday morning, Christine was back. This time she had a man with her, someone I had not seen before. He wore a reflective vest and carried a clipboard. He introduced himself as a vendor compliance officer contracted by the HOA. He said he was here to conduct a site inspection and document hazards. I asked what hazards. He pointed at the reflective triangle. That creates a tripping risk, he said. I told him the triangle was 4 inches tall and bright orange. If someone tripped on it, they were not looking. He wrote something on his clipboard. Then he walked around my property, taking notes. Christine stood at the curb watching, her arms crossed, that cheap plastic badge clipped to her coat like she was law enforcement. The vendor finished and handed me a carbon copy of his report. It listed 4 violations: snow pile encroachment, unapproved exterior marker, drainage obstruction, and failure to maintain ice-free walkways. The last one was absurd. I had salted my walkway that morning. There was no ice. I took photos of my entire property with my phone, time-stamped, showing clear pavement and no hazards. Then I filed the photos with my records folder. Friday, I went to the management company office. It was in a strip mall 20 minutes away. I brought my laptop, my binder, and a portable scanner. The property manager met me in a conference room. He had a banker's box full of paper. I started with the meeting minutes. I found the November minutes, the ones that had been edited. I asked for the original draft. He said there was no draft, just the approved version. I told him I had a copy of an earlier version that did not match. He said that was impossible. I opened my laptop and showed him, side by side. Same meeting date, different text. The earlier version had no mention of winter protocols. The posted version did. He stared at the screen. Then he said he would need to check with the board. I told him I was copying everything in that box, and he could check with whoever he wanted, but I was not leaving without the records. I spent 2 hours scanning. I found 3 more discrepancies. Minutes that had been altered after the meeting to add committee authorizations that were never voted on. Christine's name appeared in every edit. I took the scans and left. On the way home, I called my attorney. I told him what I had found. He said altering meeting minutes after approval was fraud. If the HOA had used those minutes to justify fines or liens, it was grounds for a lawsuit and possibly criminal charges. I asked what I should do. He said I could file a complaint with the state, or I could confront the board directly and force them to correct the record. He suggested the latter would be faster and cheaper. I decided to do both. Saturday, I drafted a formal complaint to the Nevada Real Estate Division. I attached the scans, the side-by-side comparison, and a timeline of Christine's enforcement actions. I cited the statutes she had violated. I requested an investigation. Then I printed copies of everything and made a packet for every board member. I looked up their addresses on the county assessor site. Sunday morning, I hand-delivered the packets. I did not knock. I left them in mailboxes. Monday, my phone rang. It was the board president, a man named Greg, who lived on the other side of the neighborhood. He said he had received my packet and wanted to meet. I said I would meet him at the clubhouse that evening at 6. He agreed. I brought Paul. We arrived early. Greg was already there, along with 2 other board members. Christine was not there. Greg looked tired. He said he had spent the weekend reviewing the documents, and he was shocked. He said he had no idea Christine had been editing minutes or creating unauthorized committees. I asked if he was going to do something about it. He said the board would hold an emergency meeting and vote to remove Christine from the architectural committee. He said they would also void all fines issued under the winter safety protocol. I said that was a start, but it was not enough. I wanted a full audit of every enforcement action Christine had taken in the past 2 years. I wanted refunds for everyone who had paid fines under false pretenses. And I wanted Christine off the board entirely. Greg said he could not promise that without a membership vote. I told him I would take it to the membership myself if he did not. We scheduled a special meeting for the following Saturday. Greg said he would post notice to all residents and make sure Christine was there. The week dragged. I spent every evening preparing. I made a presentation. I printed handouts. I practiced what I was going to say. Paul helped. He reviewed my timeline and suggested I focus on 3 things: the altered minutes, the fake committee, and the refund demand. Friday night, I got an email from Christine. Subject line: harassment complaint. She accused me of stalking her, recording her without consent, and defaming her to the board. She said she was filing a restraining order and would pursue legal action for damages. I forwarded the email to my attorney. He replied within an hour. He said her complaint was frivolous and she had no grounds for a restraining order. He also said the email was likely an intimidation tactic to keep me from showing up to the meeting. I was not intimidated. Saturday, I arrived at the clubhouse at 10. The parking lot was full. I had expected maybe a dozen people. There were at least 40. Paul met me at the door. He said word had spread, and half the neighborhood wanted to see what was going to happen. The meeting room was packed. Greg sat at a table in the front with the other board members. Christine sat in the back corner, her arms crossed, her face tight. She wore the cheap plastic badge on her coat, even though this was not an enforcement event. Greg called the meeting to order. He read a statement summarizing the complaint I had filed and the evidence I had provided. He said the board had reviewed the documents and confirmed that meeting minutes had been altered and that the Winter Safety Committee had never been officially authorized. There was a murmur in the room. People were looking at Christine. She did not move. Greg said the board was voting to dissolve the Winter Safety Committee, void all fines issued under its authority, and remove Christine from her position as Architectural Committee Chair. He asked for a motion. One of the board members made it. Another seconded. They voted. 4-0. Christine abstained. The room erupted. People started shouting questions. Someone asked if they would get refunds. Greg said yes. Someone else asked if Christine would face consequences. Greg said that was up to the membership. I stood. I asked if I could present my evidence. Greg nodded. I walked to the front and connected my laptop to the projector. I pulled up the side-by-side comparison of the November minutes. I explained what had been changed and when. I showed the timeline of enforcement actions. I showed the bogus fees and the fake legal surcharges. Then I played the video I had recorded of Christine threatening to tow my car. The room went silent. On the screen, Christine's voice was clear. "We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works." I paused the video. I looked at Christine. She was staring at the floor. I said, "This is not about one snow pile or one fine. This is about a pattern of abuse. Christine has been running a private enforcement operation with no oversight and no accountability. She has been altering official records to justify her actions. That is fraud. And every single person in this room who paid a fine under her fake rules deserves their money back. Someone in the back shouted that they had paid $300 for a snow pile violation last year. Someone else said they had been fined for an ice patch that was not even on their property. Another person said Christine had threatened to foreclose on their house over a late fee. Greg banged the table. He said the board would conduct a full audit and issue refunds within 30 days. He also said the board was recommending that the membership vote to recall Christine from the board entirely. Christine stood. Her face was red. She said this was a witch hunt. She said she had been volunteering her time to keep the neighborhood safe, and this was how she was being treated. She said I was a troublemaker who had moved in and tried to undermine everything she had built. I did not respond. I just stood there, holding my binder, waiting. Paul stood. He said he had lived in Juniper Iceway for 20 years, and he had never seen anything like what Christine had done. He said she had turned a quiet neighborhood into a place where people were afraid to park their cars or put up a holiday decoration without getting fined. He said it was time for her to go. The room clapped. Christine looked around, her mouth open, her hands shaking. Then she grabbed her coat and walked out. The board scheduled a recall vote for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, they suspended all enforcement actions and hired an independent auditor to review every fine issued in the past 2 years. The auditor's report came back 10 days later. It found that Christine had issued over $60,000 in fines, most of them based on rules that did not exist. About 40% of residents had paid under protest. The rest had just paid to avoid the hassle. The board voted to refund every penny and to implement new policies requiring all fines to be reviewed by a third party before being issued. The recall vote was unanimous. Christine was removed from the board. She moved out of the neighborhood 2 months later. As for me, I got a formal apology from the board, a full refund of all fines and fees, and a settlement that included a provision limiting the HOA's enforcement authority during winter. The board also agreed to post all meeting minutes in draft form before approval, and to allow residents to comment before any changes were made. The reflective triangle is still on my driveway. Nobody has said a word. Paul and I still meet for coffee once a week. He says the neighborhood feels different now. People are not afraid anymore. The new architectural committee actually responds to emails. The board posts agendas in advance. It is boring and functional, which is exactly what an HOA should be. I still read municipal codes for fun, but now I also read HOA bylaws, and I help neighbors who get bogus notices. I have become the person people call when the board tries something shady. Christine's winter compliance hotline does not exist anymore. The vendor she hired stopped returning the HOA's calls after the audit revealed he had been billing for inspections that never happened. The management company replaced their property manager after it came out that he had been copying Christine on enforcement emails before they went to residents, giving her advance notice to edit minutes. The fake winter enforcement surcharge that Christine invented turned out to be her own creation. The management company had no record of authorizing it. She had been pocketing the extra fees. The auditor found deposits into her personal account that matched the surcharge totals. The board reported it to the district attorney. I do not know what happened after that, but I heard she moved to Arizona. The timestamp on the email Christine sent threatening the vendor fee showed she had sent it at 6:42 in the morning, a full 18 minutes before the supposed deadline she had screamed about. That was the funny karma moment. She insisted on a deadline, and the timestamp proved she lied. When I showed that to the board, one of the members actually laughed out loud. The HOA removed the enforcement action and voided the ledger entry for every fine tied to the Winter Safety Committee. Christine was forced to apologize on the record in front of the room, though she did it through gritted teeth and left immediately after. The settlement included refunds and limits on enforcement, which is exactly what I had asked for from the start. The independent audit found improper late fees tied to winter notices, and the HOA was forced to refund a large batch of charges across the neighborhood. People got checks in the mail ranging from $50 to over $1,000. Some residents had been paying bogus fees for 2 winters in a row. One couple told me they had almost sold their house because they could not keep up with the fines. They got a refund check for $1,800. They framed it. The neighborhood group chat, which used to be full of complaints and warnings about Christine's patrols, is now mostly people sharing snow removal tips and asking if anyone has a spare shovel. It is boring. It is wonderful. I still shovel my driveway at 5 in the morning when it snows. I still put the reflective triangle near my wheel. Nobody has ever said another word about it. Last month, someone new moved in 2 houses down. They got a welcome packet from the HOA that included a summary of the new enforcement policies and a note that said if they ever received a notice they thought was unfair, they should contact the board or talk to me. The new rules require any enforcement action to include a citation to the specific covenant section, a photo of the violation, and a chance to respond before a fine is issued. If the fine is over $100, it has to be reviewed by the full board. Christine's old system of spot fines and threats is gone. Paul jokes that I am the neighborhood's unofficial ombudsman now. I do not mind. I would rather answer questions and help people understand their rights than watch someone else get steamrolled. The snow pile that started everything is long gone, melted in a warm spell back in February. But every time it snows, I think about that morning Christine showed up screaming at 7. I think about how close I came to just paying the fine and moving on. I am glad I did not. The contractors finished the ice dam work on my roof the week after the recall vote. No more leaks. No more emergency calls. The warm spell Paul had warned me about came and went. The freeze cycle after that was the last big storm of the season. My gutters held. My driveway stayed clear. The triangle stayed put. Christine's cheap plastic badge, the one she wore like it gave her authority, ended up in a box of unclaimed items at the clubhouse after she moved out. Someone posted a photo of it in the group chat with the caption "museum piece." People laughed. It felt good. The management company brought in a new property manager who actually returns calls and does not play favorites. The first thing he did was post the full covenant and bylaws to the portal in a searchable format. No more corrupted PDFs. No more stall tactics. Greg stayed on as board president. He is not perfect, but he listens. When someone raised a concern about holiday lights being up too long, he reminded everyone that the rules say decorations can stay up through January, and that enforcement should focus on actual safety issues, not aesthetics. That was a win. I still have the scans of the altered meeting minutes. I keep them backed up in 3 places. My attorney said I should hold on to them in case Christine ever tries to sue the HOA or come back. I do not think she will, but I am ready. Paul brought over his old covenants again last week. We were comparing them to the current version, just to make sure nothing else had been changed. Everything matched. The board had done a full reconciliation after the audit and corrected every discrepancy. It is clean now. I asked Paul why he had kept copies for so long. He said he had always suspected something was off, but he did not have the energy to fight it. When I moved in and started asking questions, he saw a chance to fix it. He said he was glad I had not backed down. I told him I could not have done it without him. That was true. If Paul had not saved those old documents, I would not have had the proof I needed. If he had not shown up to the meeting and backed me up, the board might have brushed it off as a personal grudge. The neighborhood feels different now. People wave when I shovel. They ask how I am doing. They share stories about the old days when Christine was in charge, and everyone just kept their heads down. It is cathartic. It is healing. Someone started a petition to rename the Winter Compliance Hotline the Community Snow Helpline and make it an actual resource instead of a threat system. The board approved it. Now when someone calls, they get connected to a volunteer list of neighbors who help with shoveling for elderly or disabled residents. Christine would hate it. The Nevada Real Estate Division investigation is still ongoing. I get updates every few weeks. They are taking it seriously. Altering meeting minutes is not something they see often, and when it is tied to financial enforcement like fines and liens, it becomes a big deal. I do not know what the outcome will be, but I am hopeful. The settlement I got from the HOA included a clause that prevents them from retaliating against me for filing complaints or speaking at meetings. My attorney insisted on it. I am glad he did. It means I can keep asking questions and holding them accountable without worrying about being targeted again. I have not received a single violation notice since the recall. My grass could be a foot tall and my snow pile could be blocking the street, and I do not think anyone would say a word. But I keep my property clean anyway. Not because I am afraid, but because it is the right thing to do. That is the difference. Before, I was shoveling out of fear. Now I am shoveling because I want to. The tow truck driver who refused to take my car showed up at my door a few weeks after the meeting. He said he had heard what happened, and he wanted to apologize for even considering it. He said Christine had told him I was blocking emergency access, and he did not realize it was my own driveway. I told him he had made the right call. He seemed relieved. The vendor compliance officer who documented fake violations never came back. The auditor found he had billed the HOA for over 30 site visits that never happened. The board terminated the contract and sent a demand letter for repayment. I do not know if they got the money back, but at least he is not wandering around the neighborhood with a clipboard anymore. The laminated policy sheet Christine used to wave around was never found. She probably threw it away when she moved. It does not matter. The board now requires all policies to be posted to the portal in writing before enforcement, and residents have 30 days to comment. No more secret rules. No more surprise fines. One of the things the auditor recommended was mandatory training for board members and committee chairs on Nevada HOA law. The board agreed. They brought in an attorney to run a workshop. I attended. So did Paul. Christine did not. She was already gone by then. The attorney covered topics like proper notice, hearing procedures, lien requirements, and limits on enforcement authority. It was basic stuff, but half the room was taking notes like it was breaking news. That is how little oversight there had been. At the end of the workshop, someone asked what homeowners should do if they think the board is acting improperly. The attorney said document everything, request records, and if necessary, file a complaint with the state or hire a lawyer. Then he looked at me and said, or find someone in your neighborhood who knows how to read a statute. People laughed. I smiled. The workshop cost the HOA $3,000. It was worth every penny. The refunds took 6 weeks to process. The board sent a letter to every household explaining what had happened, why the fines were being voided, and how much each household was getting back. My refund was $1,100. I donated half of it to a local charity that helps low-income families with emergency home repairs. Paul got $800. He bought a new snowblower. The couple who had almost sold their house used their refund to pay off medical bills. They sent me a thank you card. I put it on my fridge. The new architectural committee chair is a retired teacher named Linda who lives near the park. She is patient, organized, and does not wear a badge. She approves requests within a week and actually explains why if she has to say no. It is a shocking improvement. Linda called me last month to ask if I would be interested in joining the committee. I said no. I told her I had done my part and I was happy to stay on the sidelines. She understood. She said if I ever changed my mind, the door was open. I might take her up on that someday. But for now, I am good. The snow season is almost over. We have had 2 more storms since the recall, both small. My driveway is clear. My sidewalk is salted. My pile is exactly where it always was, 18 inches from the curb, and nobody has said a word. The streetlights still reflect off wet ice on cold nights. The plow still rumbles past at 4 in the morning. The neighbors still shovel and wave. It is quiet. It is normal. It is exactly what I wanted when I moved here. I appreciate you coming back.